Good morning. We're continuing this theme on dealing with our thorns in the flesh and how those frequently can be a gateway into beatitude, or this blessed reality that Jesus talks about in the Sermon on the Mount in the Beatitudes. And that these things that we're struggling with can actually be gateways into grabbing a hold of God and His kingdom, grabbing a hold of grace, or maybe better to say that the kingdom grabs hold of us, that grace actually grabs hold of us. So we talked about this idea of identifying your thorn, of looking at wanting to make it stop, and our responses, our reaction to that are fight, flight, freeze. Then we pray against it, and then we when prayer doesn't solve it, a lot of times we'll give up on God or we'll give up on prayer. But if we persist, if we continue to focus on the Lord in this whole thing and ask God how we are to see it, then God will actually open our eyes. He'll give us insight, but it doesn't always happen, just all of a sudden at one point in time. Remember with the incident with Peter and Jesus, after Peter had denied Jesus 3 times, and this is, I think, an epic fail, maybe more than anything that any of us have ever committed. And Jesus has said, "I'm going to deny you before my Father. You deny me before people." Peter has denied him before people. This is the DQ, the disqualification of all time. And Jesus has breakfast with Peter, and Peter is just absolutely just dejected. And Jesus asks him a question: "Do you love me?" Well, that's not the question that Peter's expecting. Peter's expecting Jesus to confront him and what he has done. And instead, Jesus actually just asks Peter, "Do you love me?" And he asks him it 3 times. Now, Peter has denied him 3 times, but in this whole thing, Jesus is upgrading how Peter sees Jesus, and how Peter sees himself, and how Peter sees his entire circumstance. But he asks him the question, "Do you love me?" And I think that's a very potent question that kind of defines a whole bunch of things about how we see ourselves and how we see reality and how we see God in the midst of situations that we don't seem to have any control over, or perhaps situations that we have botched beyond belief. So that's something to think about today, that ask God, how do you see this circumstance that I'm going in? How do you see that I'm going through? How do you see me? And how can I see you? How can I find you? God is asking us to ask Him how to see. Thanks for joining me. God bless you.